Welcome to the Awaken Beauty podcast. I am Cassandra, your organic beauty, positive mind management, and biofeedback practitioner. And today we have the wonderful, wonderful gift of Dr. Crista joining us on the Awaken Beauty podcast. Now, if you or someone you love has struggled with the challenge and often life-altering side effects that come with toxic mold exposure, you know the journey to recovery can be very long, tedious, and very expensive. Some of you may know that I was affected by hidden mold in my organic salon over 6 years ago and nearly lost my life from the fast health decline and severe anemia. I've also witnessed many of my own clients affected by hidden mold, later to be discovered and delayed severe health conditions from immune deficiencies, chemical sensitivities, hidden skin rashes, and hair loss. So with that said, on today's really important episode, I speak with naturopathic doctor and functional medicine practitioner, Dr. Crista, on mold and mycotoxins. Let me tell you, mold can make you crazy, lazy, and hazy. So you'll definitely want to listen as we jump into how to become aware and empower yourself and others on how to uncover and treat mold and mycotoxin exposure, including key dietary, lifestyle, and even some supplement considerations. So a little bit about Jill. Dr. Crista is author of Break the Mold, 5 Tools to Conquer Mold and Take Back Your Health, a book for mold sickness sufferers. Her interest in mold was fueled by suffering of her chronically ill patients, and she was driven to seek out the truth behind their underlying symptoms. Mold and mycotoxins were often the invisible cause. So Dr. Jill developed a unique treatment approach that built of research findings onto the foundations of her naturopathic education and philosophies. And she's help mold and mycotoxin ill patients for over a decade and feels compelled to share what she's learned. Jill is now focused on research, teaching, and writing, and incorporating what she has learned, and also now developing key access to practitioners and functional medicine practitioners to help bring awareness to this very important topic. So welcome to the Awaken Beauty podcast, Miss Jill. Thank you so much for joining us today. We had some technical difficulties, but thanks for hanging in there with me.
Thank you. It is really a treat to be on your podcast. I've been really enjoying all the, catching up on it and the quantum conversations and that kind of thing. I think it's really important for that, you don't think of mold illness as something that affects you on that level, but it definitely affects you on the energetic plane as well. So I've been really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. And, I think we can even touch that point as far as EMF and just kind of how that corresponds with EMF once we get into the episode. So good. I'm so glad that you're keyed in. So thank you again. I think, as I mentioned, I know everybody kind of has a story and lightly touches that could be a mold or a mycotoxin. And for me, it was in our salon, which was so ironic because here we are, an organic salon, doing everything right. But at the same time, these hidden pieces are in our lives. And, just as of 2 weeks ago, I do biofeedback and I'm thinking, okay, these low-grade infections are not going away. And it finally came to me and I was reviewing some of your data and I thought, oh my gosh, I need to ask my client if she's ever been exposed to mold. Well, 2 years ago, she's like, yeah, I lived with my grandpa for a while and he had severe mold. And oh yeah, that's when all of these symptoms started, so it's not top of mind for a lot of people.
Exactly.
And because it's an epidemic, it's a silent epidemic like many, but I really am so happy to have you on and start to maybe kind of give us how you became so passionate about this subject. And then we can kind of go into what are molds, what are mycotoxins, how are they interrelated, and how they affect us in our life.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So I got into this because I started as a naturopathic doctor. I started my practice as a primary care doc. We're trained in primary care. And so I was seeing families the benefit of seeing a whole family is you start to see trends, like you were talking about, the trends that you see when someone's in the chair. So what I ended up in a Lyme endemic area. And usually when you use naturopathic medicine, and functional medicine, you find and treat the cause, people tend to get better. People come to us expecting homework. They come to us with a willingness to do homework. And, because really people heal themselves. So we just give them the guidelines. So yeah, I was having success. And then there was this group of people who just weren't getting better. And they, thank goodness they stuck with me. I think many of them, if I were them and in their shoes, I would have probably sought out a different practitioner for a different opinion of like, I'm not really getting better. But a lot of them came to me because I was the lady that got people better that didn't get, success other places. So in one of those patients, they discovered black mold in his home. When the contractor went back and was reviewing the history of the building, the building's health history, he said, I think this has probably been going on between 10 to 12 years because it was after a remodel, and the remodel was done inappropriately. So that's a long time to be exposed to black mold. And when I got into the research, when I graduated, I definitely had environmental medicine courses. That's one beautiful thing about my education, is that they talk about that. So I came away with an appreciation that, mold is a big deal. It's really, really bad for your health, bigger than people understand, and it's more than allergies. It is allergies, can cause allergies, but that's not the only thing that it does.
Right.
And as I got into the research, I started to have all of these things click together. Like, oh, this is why this guy's gut is still a mess, even though he does everything 110% perfectly. This is why he can't sleep. This is why he's got urinary frequency and ear ringing and, anxiety through the roof, where he actually gets worse from anxiety medication. So those were all the little things, counterintuitive reactions to medication. The gut gets destroyed, the urinary system gets destroyed. So it's just this whole trend. And all of that research was done on animals. And when I went to look for human research, I couldn't find any. And that really fueled my passion. So then I thought, I wonder if mold is what's going on with these other people that aren't responding to my, Lyme treatment protocols. Because if you look at a Venn diagram of symptoms, they cross over pretty profoundly. So, and in almost all of those patients that weren't progressing, they either had a past or a current mold exposure going on that we thought of as, I didn't know, I don't know that I would have known to even take it as seriously then as I do now, but they were thinking of it as an aesthetic problem, something that, oh yeah, we got to get that painted over. Oh, we need to get that cleaned up, sort of like became low on the burner because it didn't seem as serious as their health problems were. So that's how I got into learning about creating a protocol. It was through trial and error and many, many years and many, many patients that you figure out kind of what works and what didn't. And when I ended up in a moldy house myself, and I can't believe that happened. If someone who was versed in mold and had worked with inspectors, I would do home visits with these patients, and I would go when their inspector was going and their remediation company. And that's the nice thing about seeing a family practice doc in a smaller town is, you go to people's homes and them, the families. And so I had all of this knowledge, but when it hit me, one of the number one things is brain fog and fatigue and like cognitive issues, confusion, and it's almost like you're drunk, So I was basically going through life getting more and more buzzed as we were closing up the house for winter, and I was getting more and more exposed to those toxins. And then the flood revealed itself. It wasn't until February, late February, so it was all winter of this exposure. And when it revealed itself, I thought, oh my goodness, I know what to do. This is mold. I didn't realize that this was mold. My kids were getting worse. Her pet was getting sick. It was just amazing. And I knew exactly what the action plan was. And that's when I really felt like, okay, mold is talking to me. The mold illness people in the world are talking to me. I need to write a book because I felt so privileged to have this information. I knew exactly what to do. I did go into fear because that's a normal response, but I moved through that really fast and just got into like, what are we going to do about this? And it's a big project, it affects your home and your health and your finances and your sanctuary and all of these things. But I just felt so privileged that I knew and I had the tools. And most of the time, my tools are all you need. You don't need pharmaceutical drugs, and you don't need something that's outside of yourself or that outside of your access. So that's where the book came from.
Wow. And we become passionate about what we've been affected by, and
Yes.
it's so interesting how, it later affects you. I also have a dear friend and a, chiropractor and a practitioner herself treating these clients. And just this summer,
Great.
they were also faced with the same thing and could tie back just the behavioral issues with her children, where it wasn't really
Mhm.
affecting her so much, probably because she keeps up on so much of, the microbial health and gut health and all of that with her own health. Same with mine. Same with yours. You were
Right.
fairly healthy, so your body could fight it for so long.
Mhm.
But thank you for sharing that. I did not know that you were affected as well.
Yeah.
So double whammy. So,
Yeah.
we talk about mold and we also hear the term mycotoxins. I'd love to kind of start off by separating these two and helping the listeners understand the impact of mycotoxins versus mold spores and how they have a relationship with each other and
Yeah, I'm
outside and
so
inside the
glad.
body.
Really glad you asked that, because that's part of my mission, is to expand the definition of mold illness. If you look at the CDC's definition, it's basically what I call spore illness. It's
Right.
going to be the sinusitis, hay fever, allergies, and maybe asthma if you have a really long-term ongoing exposure.
Mhm.
So those are really allergic type, inflammatory type reactions.
Mhm.
But mold, that is a part, and they're not to be, spores have their own very serious health issues that they can invade a body and create something called aspergillosis. That's a true fungal infection, an invasive fungal infection. But the thing that gets ignored, and probably the majority of the symptoms in the patients that I see, are the mycotoxins. And so
Mhm.
happily living mold creates all of these chemicals. I call them mold farts because it's just metabolism. It's off gassing from metabolism, and they're happy and they're off gassing. And these are things like alcohols, aldehydes,
Yep.
microbial VOCs. And we're familiar with that with alcohol. We use yeast fermentation, and it's happy yeast who has all the sugar it wants. And
Yep.
so you get those kind of chemicals. So not only does mold have spore and mycotoxin, it also has all these chemicals.
Yep.
So happy mold, now you're dealing with the spore, you're dealing with the chemicals, and then you're dealing with this other super poisonous gas that mold makes called mycotoxins. The
Mhm.
mycotoxins are 50 times smaller than the smallest spore, and they're not a living thing, they're a toxin, but they're a toxin
Yep.
from mold, so we call them mycotoxin. They can seep through building material. So if you don't have spores you can see, that may not be affecting you from a spore illness side, but the mycotoxins are migrating their way through the building material into the indoor air, and that is polluting you. And these
Mhm.
mycotoxins are so toxic, militaries around the world are using them for biowarfare. They're
Yep.
collecting and concentrating them, keeping a bank of mycotoxins, basically. We also have mycotoxins that we use in medicine. We use a mycotoxin, well, it's actually a chemical of mold called MPA for organ rejection. It shuts down the immune system. So these are some of the things that we start to realize that, oh my goodness, a lot of antibiotics are mycotoxins. They're designed to kill other living things. You don't
Mhm.
want that floating around in your indoor air.
Yeah. Well, or in your body. So another
No.
story. You know, I I took a cone beam test 2 years ago to determine some low grade infections in 3 root canals.
Mm.
And I've had enough of clients and evidence of breast cancer and cancer from low grade infections dripping from root canals. So went on an antibiotic just because the dentist, who is a biological dentist, said, I need this to get under control. Let's do a short spin of it, which turned into 2 weeks, which then brought back, to your point,
Oof.
all of those old symptoms that I had with mold toxicity. If you look at
Mhm.
penicillin and go find it in nature,
Yeah.
it's an antibiotic. And
Right.
so all of a sudden, instant brain fog was back,
Mhm.
completely fatigued. And I could do all I could do just to be present with clients and wipe off all of their work things because you just cannot even focus. And people don't really understand the insidiousness
Mhm.
of where we pick it up, whether in food or antibiotics with the best of intentions, they're there. And that's why I love, and thank you for talking about the mycotoxins, because to me, really, that's getting into more of the severity of mold and what it then off gases, because it's even more powerful and seeps out of things and is so much more invisible than mold itself. So yeah, super,
Yeah.
super clear.
And remediation companies aren't remediating mycotoxins. They're
Right.
remediating the spores and fragments, which is very important because
Right.
the spores and fragments are the fire, the mycotoxins are the smoke. So, you know, you do need to put the fire out. You need to get the spores out of that environment, but very few remediation companies are taking care of the mycotoxin piece. And that's a problem because these mycotoxins, they're a sticky, gooey, fat-soluble toxin, and they can get into wallpaper. They can get into your drywall. They can seep into especially porous furniture like mattresses and couches. So you can have a completely clean bill of health and a really great remediation company to take care of your mold problem. But if you don't address the fact that there are mycotoxins that are probably contaminating that area as well, you may still be having mycotoxicosis, not, you know, the full mold sickness anymore because the spores and the fragments are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love your comment on just your mattress. I had,
Yeah.
Samina Health Systems on, one of the best beds out there, and how they built it and protect it. But pounds are added to your mattress every year of
Yeah.
mycotoxins and mold of poop. It's
Yeah.
seriously poop.
Yeah.
And
Isn't
so
that
I'm like,
disgusting?
if anything else, if you know you don't have mold in your house, please go and address your mattress, because I can
Yes.
guarantee you it's there.
Yeah. And I know your one of your focuses is sleep from listening to your
Yeah.
podcast. And it's just like, why would you sleep in that? And you know, from a mold standpoint, we sweat when we sleep. That's a really normal thing. That's one of our detox times. And so if you're going to be sweating out mycotoxins, you need to address your mattress as part of your remediation. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah. So these mycotoxins, they are they're what I'm seeing cause the majority of my patients' symptoms, and they're toxic to nerves, they're toxic to the immune system, to the gut. They slow healing and increase aging, and that's where it gets into the whole aesthetic side of it for you, for any of us personally.
Mhm.
I know for myself personally, when I was being exposed to mold, I had rapid aging of my skin. I lost
Yep.
hair, I gained weight, and I lost muscle, but I gained fat because they're fat
Yep.
soluble toxins. So I had
Yep.
that like skinny fat thing going on. Gut, so they're toxic to the gut lining. If I didn't say that, joints can get swollen. I'm trying to think of all the things. They're carcinogenic. Like that's a really bad deal. And that's just from
Mm.
breathing toxic air because the mycotoxins get in through your respiratory passages or through skin. They get through skin really easily.
Yep.
And then they go to your bloodstream, and then they can go to any fatty tissue or lipid soluble tissue. And a lot of people think when I say fatty tissue, they're thinking, you know, love handles and that kind of thing. But I'm talking, you know, brain, bone marrow, breast tissue, lymph system, gut lining. We have our whole omentum, which is a fat lining that protects our vital organs. All of these areas get really polluted with these mycotoxins, and they
Yeah.
impede the normal functioning of a cell.
Hmm. Yeah. Intracellular, extracellular water, all of that storage not being able to move. And so, you know, I think that fragment that you just put there of just where they get stored, how they get stored, where they come from. We know that they're hidden. We know that it can be a very expensive expense to even test for, you know, because in a lot of areas, people don't have these experts to come out and correctly test their home,
Right.
let alone buying a new house, quote unquote. They've checked
Right.
everything, and a year later they find out they're severely ill and are ending up with a lawsuit that they can't win because they signed the papers on the house they bought that was infested
Yes.
with mold.
I'm glad that you said that because a lot of times people think that a home inspector is going to be able to to guarantee there's no mold. Home
Hmm.
inspectors are not mold inspectors.
No,
So it is so worth the money to have a certified mold inspector also come and inspect that home because that's a huge
100%.
purchase. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thousands of dollars. And then, quite frankly, in most cases, you will either end up doing a full remodel or you will move out of the home.
Yeah.
I mean,
Especially if
that's a
you've
lot
been
of
made
time.
sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you're sensitized, there is something that happens, and there's a period of time where it's different for everybody, but where your immune system can rebound and you can become the resilient person you were before. Even though you become a resilient person, you still now are pre-sensitized, and there you'll be the person that, and maybe you have this too, you walk into a restaurant and you're like, nope, there's mold in this place. We're going to have to find somewhere else, so, and everyone else in your world is saying, what? Because you become an inconvenient person to be around.
Mhm. 100%.
That you have to say, oh, we need to find new plans because I can't be in this restaurant. So when you get really resilient, you can notice and just go ahead and let that flow through you, have your meal, enjoy yourself. But, when you're, whatever that period of time is, if you're still in the immune healing phase, just that single exposure, because the air is what first got you sick, breathing the air of a sick building again can put your body back into a trauma response.
Yeah. And I really love that you said that, there's more than just a physical, there
Mm-hmm.
is we have we live in a field, and that information in that field, and you're catching the scent, but your field is remembering the response to that. And so everything tightens up and starts to communicate with your body, the same reactions that you would have gotten when you were really sick. So the trauma for a lot of people is really hard. And, one question I have for you is, we've kind of talked a little bit about where, symptoms. So that's the allergen piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client who is a school teacher who taught for many years and finally retired a year ago. And now that she's out of that system, her body, in my knowledge, would be that she was able to hold up her health for so long because her body was hanging on to her immune system to keep her moving, alive, and to re-enter that for so many years. Now that she's out and retired for a year, I'm seeing her come in and her body is just breaking down. She's having tremors, severely, severely ill. So,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk through a little bit about your steps, your key 4 steps. Obviously, the first step, removed herself from the area. Maybe you could talk us through why now she's getting sick. Obviously, the body's breaking down, and what are those next 3 steps that you recommend for people that are being exposed by mold?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to have a meter or a dial in your mind when you're thinking about this concept
Mm-hmm.
that goes from, flat to flat. So it's a half moon, and you've got a little needle in there, and the needle wants to be right in the middle, standing up straight. But, through life, I think of it as the healing path needle. When you're on your healing path, sometimes you can, and things are aligning, you can just stay right in the middle. But often life doesn't happen that way. So, we have times when the needle has to go into accumulate and deal with it later. And then you can do super healthy things that help you to detoxify and heal and get closer to the healing path on the other side of that. Now, when you're actively being exposed, the body just basically accumulates and deals. And the fat soluble toxins are the ones like mycotoxins are the
Right.
ones that we can store. And there was some debate initially on whether that was actually really a thing. But yes, absolutely. From my experience, I see that people can store these mycotoxins. They do store these mycotoxins. That's why we get, weight gain and some of the symptoms that we get. But if you're a healthy enough person, you can actually deceive yourself that you're handling it, and it'll just accumulate and store and deal with later. And then when you get out of that environment, now the body says, okay, that was horrible. We don't want these things in here anymore. Now we have to start getting rid of them. And
Mm-hmm.
just getting out of a space can start that process. And that's why my steps, I said earlier that fungus is the fire and mycotoxins are the smoke. We don't go into putting out the fire mode or antifungals until the last step of my process, because of that very key that people will start to detoxify just by getting them out of the mold exposure. And so my next
Yep.
steps are all about supporting that detoxification and supporting the immune system and all the tissues like mitochondria and all of these tissues that really took a hit, massive oxidation damage. There's a lot that we have to restore and support in order to be ready. And so just doing that part, getting rid of the mycotoxins that want to come out naturally, that's wonderful. But in the majority of patients, they need an antifungal to just reset the biome, just to put it back to feeling safe in the world. I
Yeah.
mean, that's that whole idea that you talked about, the response that is trauma. It's also limbic system saying, we're breathing a poison. This is stupid. Get out. And if
Yep.
you don't get out, or you can't because that's your job and you're working on trying to find another one, or you're working on trying to find new housing, then your limbic system is trying to help you to say, get out, get out, get out. And it feels ignored. So it gets stuck in its own loop of anxiety. And this is not on the conscious level. This is totally subconscious.
And which is probably, well, related to insomnia and everything else. You're
You
just
bet.
wired and tired all the time. And, the body just can't orientate itself.
Yeah.
So
And that's why I say crazy, hazy, lazy, because, the crazy is
that
you
term.
are the.
I just love it. I'm like, bingo. That's all you need to say. Mold, crazy, lazy, hazy.
Yeah.
You got mold.
Yeah, exactly. And the crazy
Uh-huh.
is you feel like the weirdo, like everybody else around you doesn't seem to be as affected. And some people are more susceptible than others, which has to do with genetics and nutritional status and previous exposure and all kinds of things. So, yeah.
Which really goes into how long it, will take for somebody to heal from mold. I mean, I still sauna every day and, exercise at low impact every day and do all of these things just to keep my body that's, always detoxing. So you understand the importance of detox in case whatever's going on. But depending on how long they've been in it, what kind of support they have from practitioners like you are all going to make an impact on how long it takes to really heal from exposure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what was one of the big goals of my book, is that I wanted people, if they didn't have access to a specialist, to have it be specific enough, actionable enough, specific dosing that I use with my patients, so people can do this on their own if they have absolutely no resources.
Awesome.
I'm hoping people will use the resources that they have and seek out, a lot of mold literate doctors now. There's a whole list of them that have taken my course on my website, that will do the course now with everything with Corona. You can telemedicine almost anything now. And that's wonderful, because now it just opened up the access for people who didn't have anyone to take care of them, or to help them take care of themselves, really, is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to create precedents on working with a professional, though, because, there's so many blogs out there and so many great resources, truly, truly. But, if you don't have your detox channels opened, like you had prefaced, you could do more harm than good trying to address these things, especially if they're being stored in the brain and these other areas of the body. So, certainly you are a great resource, and you probably are able to connect practitioners that are corresponding with your courses now that you're teaching, that can also help direct them towards somebody locally so they can reach out to you. As far as some of those kind of tactile things, supplements, I work with Cellcore Biosciences.
All right, you got there.
Cellcore Biosciences. Swear I don't brain fog. It was only 4 weeks ago that I lost 3 root canals, but
whoa, really?
Yeah, I was done. I'm like, just take them out. I do not even.
Wow.
I just was so done. And it's going to be part of my story. But
yeah,
supplements. Obviously, helpful ones that I know of are going to be quercetin, and you also know glutathione and milk thistle. And these are some of kind of the subtle, gentle supplements that people can take. So I have glutathione, milk thistle, lipoic acid, quercetin, and N-acetylcysteine. How about testing for mold? How do you direct somebody to doing correct testing for mold?
That's where it's really nice to have a practitioner. Yeah. Because the testing has its limitations. With testing, there isn't anything that 100% for sure can find that you are being exposed to mold right now today. The one that I use the most is the urine mycotoxin test.
Okay.
The limitation of that is a couple, is that that could be something you're eating. So I have a prep sheet. It's a urine mycotoxin prep sheet that takes people on a low mold and mycotoxin diet for 3 days, so that we've kind of removed that possibility or that argument. Most of that argument, not that we don't get exposed to mycotoxins in our food. We definitely do. Like, there's something that you eat or drink every day, like coffee. You want to make sure that it's mold and mycotoxin free, like a bulletproof or that kind of thing. But if you're eating a pretty whole food diet, a human is going to get a lot less mycotoxin toxicity exposure in their food than an animal. So, but it can happen, and we don't want that distraction on the test. So I'll have people go on a low mold diet or mold and mycotoxin diet for 3 days, and then take the urine mycotoxin test. But for some people, like we were talking about that meter, they've now gotten out of the environment and their body is detoxing. And so we're seeing a high level, and it doesn't answer the question, is this a now problem in your environment, or was it a problem and you're now detoxifying? Because you can store these. So that is one place that I look at as one data point as part of a larger picture. And then we also make some of the other things come together. If somebody is really neurologically affected, I find that Dr. Shoemaker's online test called the VCS test, which is visual contrast sensitivity, is a very useful test to tell me as a practitioner, how deep did the mycotoxins soak? Are we talking now central nervous system depth? And that tells me how aggressive we have to be with detoxification. Glutathione is the master antioxidant in the body, but it isn't gentle. It can be really hard on people to take that right away. So, that's why that's kind of in the, my steps are avoidance, fundamentals, protect, repair, and then fight. That's kind of in that repair area, because now we've already gone through the previous steps. We know that we've protected someone's fat soluble areas with, I could say copious, clean, correct fats. I like alliterations and rhymes. You have to get those mycotoxins booted out of those areas. Like my teacher, Dr. Walter Kernian, used to always say, the solution to pollution is dilution.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if you're diluting with water, you're not going to get out a fat soluble toxin. So you have to dilute with good fats as well. So, if somebody is really, really neurologically affected, then I know, and that VCS test is positive. Oh boy, now I know how aggressive to be with the good fats and how to go a little more gentle on the detox. And then I look at things like their gut health. We might run a organic acids test. I might run a stool test to see if there are other critters now that have taken advantage of the fact that mycotoxins have reduced the immune system of the gut and caused a leaky gut, and is now going to make you more prone to food sensitivities, parasitic infections, opportunistic infections, candida. So I'm just trying to put a whole picture together with many, many data points.
Opportunistic infections.
Yes.
Sounds interesting. There's a lot of opportunity there for other correlating webs to come through and make you even more sick.
Right. I mean, when I was doing a lot of stool testing in my early days in practice, there were so many parasites that we saw that they would list, like, I forget how they would list. It was basically, don't bother, not just a traveler through. And I just was fascinated by that idea that we are ingesting critters all the time. It doesn't mean it has to be a problem from us. We can get rid of them. That's why we have an immune system in our gut. That's why the majority of our immune system is in our gut.
But correspondence between parasites and mold.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Parasites would be one of those. As I was just going to say, if you are eating something that normally we can handle with a good, mucus layer and healthy gut layer and all of our gut resident immune system, if that's no longer there or supported, now those parasites can hook on and they can hang out and become an infection. So yeah, that is very common.
Yeah, just the whole retrovirus and viruses and parasites is just, I don't know. I think you can put it into the pool of mold and parasites and all of these things. It's gives such a great opportunity for you practitioners to really play undercover because
Yeah.
it is a slow process to really figuring out. I mean, to really 6 months, 12 months, really, truly, to really unwind the onion on a lot of these things. And a client would just when they thought, oh, okay, it's parasites. And then you figure out, oh, no, it's deeper, it's Lyme. And then, oh, no, it's okay. And so it's just, I want to give people hope, that
Mhm.
there are incredible tools. There are, just like you said, incredible tests that you can start and you can kind of, start with one and then dive into another that you can really figure out. But not to walk in fear, but to walk with clarity and to really figure it out sooner than later if you suspect that you have these symptoms.
Mhm.
They are very cross symptomatic with allergens and just regular everyday fatigue and things of that nature. So I just really want to encourage anybody that's listening to this podcast and why I was so passionate about having you on is that, it's becoming one of the first things I ask people. Do you have water damage in your home? Do you have any history of your home? Where are you? Where did they go to work? A lot of these people, I'm sure, would be interesting now that everybody, because of coronavirus, are going back into their homes. How
Mhm.
many buildings do we know that Fortune 100, 200, 300 companies are certainly not going to demolish their building, but know that they have mold toxicity, that people are walking in and out of, but they just don't really address it. I mean, we've taken perfume out of the buildings, but there's serious mold in a lot of these old buildings. So that'd be interesting. So if you're having
Mhm.
symptoms, Dr. Jill's really, 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 her book, is awesome. You can see it. This beautiful book in the background, Break the Mold, which I just love the name of it. Da, 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 da.
Ta-da.
And you're doing a wonderful job now, reaching out into the community, working with functional medicine, naturopathic, and health practitioners, so
Mhm.
that they can really up level their education and start to really key in on these insights and symptoms right away to help these beautiful souls figure that out.
Yes, yes.
So tell us a little bit about what your current pursuits are and kind of what your hopes are in the next steps in your journey and elevating the knowledge and the resources on these mold sensitivities.
Yes, I am on a mission to increase and expand access to mold literate doctors.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty well trained in mold as a naturopathic doctor, and I still wasn't ready. I was missing mold in my practice. And so I'm sure that that's getting missed by many, many, many other practitioners, even functional medicine doctors who are very open to it. I spoke at the AIHM, which is a grouping of an amazing, hardworking group of doctors from all walks of life. And I had so many people come up afterwards that said, I had no idea. I have been missing it. And so that inspired me to create an online training course that a doctor can take for, their continuing education. It can expand their tool set, expand their practice, and now catch those patients when it is mold and catch it early, because the earlier you catch it, the less toxicity burden you're dealing with. And I'm
Yeah.
really trying to be a voice of hope, surety, and calm for people, because this can be such a panic striking experience.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you know what you're dealing with, it's all about, knowing what the problem is. Once we identify it, there are protocols, there are things that you can do, and people they don't have to kick themselves of like, oh, here I did all these diet changes and we thought it was parasites. And every step you take has gotten you closer to that end goal. So don't kick yourself if like you missed it and it was mold all the time. You probably in each of those pursuits got your body healthier and healthier so that we can start to see it more clearly. When you're toxic, when you have root canals, when you have, poor sleep, when you have all these things, and you can miss the real cause because things aren't as clear and defined. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I'm on a mission to do that. I have an online training course for practitioners, and we're working right now to scientifically validate the questionnaire in my book so that if people can't afford testing, if we can scientifically validate it, meaning that someone took the questionnaire and it showed a probable mold problem, and they took a urine mycotoxin test and it showed they had mycotoxins, If we see 1,000 or so of these that are consistent, now we have a little proof that simply taking the questionnaire gives you the answer you're asking, and that you can spend your money then on your home or on job searching or something like that. So those are my
Yeah.
pursuits next.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it so, so much. And I just really want to applaud you. You know, when you're pioneering in an industry, it's really, really exciting, but it's also very, very exhausting because you hold a lot of responsibility for delivering the right data, making sure you have the right research, and that you're really holding everything with the highest integrity. So I really want to acknowledge you on that
Thank
because
you.
it's an incredible pursuit. And you know, for everyone that listens to Awaken Beauty podcast, obviously, you know, we're partly aesthetic, functional medicine, spiritually, and quantum physics. And one thing that we forgot to talk about is how does EMF affect?
Oh, yes. So Dr. Klinghardt has done some really revolutionary research on this, showing that when mold is in an EMF-rich environment, it grows faster and it spits out more mycotoxins.
Yep.
And mold itself, even if you're careful with, turning your Wi-Fi off at night, that kind of thing, it does make you more EMF sensitive because of the way that it changes the chemistry in our body. I don't know if people knew. I didn't know it. I don't know how I got through medical school and didn't know. We make normal EMFs every time we exercise. So there are good EMFs and then there are external. The internal EMFs and the external EMFs are not all that different. And so when you've been exposed to mold and you start to lose the ability to tolerate your own internal EMFs, you become more sensitive to the external and more sensitive to movement and motion. And if you think about what that is, that's mold telling you, you know what, think of if we were a bacteria, because that's who mycotoxins are made for. They're designed for other molds and other bacteria. That's the mold saying, you know what, bacteria, you need to get out of here or I'm going to compost you. Of course, if a bacteria is already adhered, now the mold's job is just to compost. So it has all these things designed so that we will stay still, we'll stay inside, we stay sedentary, so it can compost us.
Exactly. It's like another feedback loop. Another feedback loop. I
Yep.
love
Yeah.
Dr. Klinghardt. I mean,
He's amazing.
he's old, but he's pretty damn amazing on how up to date he is with, just latest technology and how it affects us. And if it's really not that complicated when you understand biophysics and, the electric input of positive and negative from our own bodies, tapping into being grounded on the earth. That's another good tip. Just get outside, get that negative and positive charge from nature. And move. You're exhausted, but this is another big piece is just make sure you're moving whatever you can do. It'll make you feel better once you're done and when you're tired. But aesthetically, for clients that are listening or those that are more aesthetic minded, the rashes and the aging, like you talked about, the hair loss. I mean, any symptom in the body from low-grade infection, any kind of infection, is inflammation. And the body is just not able to revolve around its healing processes. So healing is really important, but it's really inflammation and the disconjointed hormones and cortisol and not able to sleep that causes the hair loss. And then obviously your skin is a protector, so it's trying to ward off the mycotoxins and mold that are trying to get in. So those are all things to be aware of as well.
I'm glad you mentioned inflammation because I mentioned the aging and that's rapid aging, but it's also the inflammation can run rampant. So if you are prone to inflammatory type rashes, so acne, rosacea, psoriasis, eczema, those are all found with mold as well. It isn't just the wrinkling and the age spots and that kind of thing that's more antioxidant mediated. And so, you can go whatever your tendency is to go one direction or the other, mold will find that Achilles heel and highlight it.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And people don't realize, I would say probably 50 to 60% of people have skin sensitivities, and it's a $30 billion industry, the beauty industry of the latest and greatest. But the more you can simplify your aesthetics routine, the more calming anti-inflammatories you can use on your skin, products that don't have 1,300 actives in them that are just going to cause an even more reaction, especially if you're already reacting Just scale back, make it simple, you know, get the inflammation down. A skin cream is not going to heal your eczema or psoriasis, but I can guarantee you a low yeast diet, a low antihistamine diet, and just connecting with people like Dr. Jill will help you wind out that whole onion to figure out and really clear up your skin or hair loss. So cool. So one last question.
Yes.
I always ask my guests, because you are on the Awaken Beauty podcast, what is something that you have personally awakened to as of late? And it does not have to be mold related.
It's a skin thing, vitamin C serum. Never thought about putting vitamin C on my face. I don't know. I'm, you know, very, very bare bones. I'm like you're saying, I'm the queen of bare bones. But if you are someone who is dealing with the aging part, this has really helped my skin recover from mold. Awesome. I was looking pretty wrinkly and pretty aged. So yeah, I'm in love with my vitamin C serum.
Love it. Well, if you ever want to try our Evoke Beauty vitamin C serum, it's wonderful. And just for people that don't know much about vitamin C, you know, it is a very high auric value. It's great antioxidant, but it is very, very oversold and over propped up on the market. And when you expose it, it goes rancid. And so there's a lot of cheap forms of vitamin C. You know, I always like to look for, you know, more fatty lipid based bioavailable
I'm glad that
vitamin.
you said that. Yeah. The one I'm using is very clean. It's like you said.
We use vitamin C esters in ours, and then we encompass it with astaxanthin, which is 10 times more powerful than vitamin C. So not just vitamin C, but there are other areas there too to find different. But yeah, that's great. I love that final note. I've never had an aesthetic answer to that.
Well, I just
in line with the Awaken Beauty podcast.
Well, it was on my mind. You know, it is on your mind because you know you can heal a lot from the inside, but sometimes you just need a little topical help. Same thing.
I would say you don't need any vitamin C because you have flawless skin. Beautiful.
My camera filter. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Zoom, thank you for your filter. I know you have no filter on your camera.
It's gotten much better after, you know, a little topical help. So yeah, I'm actually really excited to try yours. It'd be great.
I would love to send it to you, girl. Yeah. So we'll definitely connect. So I have, you know, everybody, I have the tips in our show notes. I've got some key supplements. I've got her book, and please go to the quiz. It's a great place to just bring awareness. You know, awareness is key, and then taking action. You know, I always talk about, you know, spiritually and biophysics and all of that. You know, we can sit there and meditate all day, but if we don't really stand in our desired true reality of wanting to be our most healthy and vital self, we're always oscillating in back and forth. But if we really keep that picture when you're going through something like this or any kind of illness, who is your true desired self? And always focus on that so that you don't oscillate back. Find intelligent people like Dr. Crista. Go to this resource list. I can guarantee you'll be right on your path and not turn back. So I just really want to thank you for being on the Awaken Beauty podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gents. So until next time, make sure you go to evoquebeauty.com, evoqbeauty.com to go and look up that vitamin C. And until next time, stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back.
I just lost her.